They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus got out of the boat, a man who was possessed by an evil spirit came out from the tombs to meet him. No one could bind this man anymore, not even with the chain. Many times he had been bound hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart, and he broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Day and night he went among the hills and in the dunes, crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus at a distance, he ran before him, fell on his knees, and cried out at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you will not torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of him, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus said to him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. Nearby, on the hillside, there was a large herd of pigs grazing. And the demons begged Jesus, "Let us go into the pigs, send us among them." So Jesus gave his permission. And the demons came out of the man, and they went into the pigs, and that herd, about 2,000 in number, charged down the steep banks of the hill into the lake and were drowned. Those who had been taking care of the pigs, when they saw what had happened, they ran away into the town and the countryside and reported these things. And people came to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, there was the man who had been possessed, sitting, dressed, and in his right mind. And the people were afraid. Those who had seen it explained what had happened to him, and also about the pigs as well. And the people begged that Jesus might leave the area. As Jesus was getting back into the boat, the man who had been possessed begged that he might be able to go with him. But Jesus would not let him. "Go back to your family," said Jesus, "and tell them what God has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away into the Decapolis, proclaiming these things, and the people were amazed. This is from the third term of our Ambassador Institute curriculum that we use in Uganda on the life of Christ. And the verse that titles our message today actually is going to come from the chapter before this story, which is in Mark 5, but we're going to hold on Mark 4:35 to title it, "Let's Go Over to the Other Side." Because actually what I'd really like to do with you guys today is try to draw together some of these chapters at the beginning of Mark. One of the great privileges of being a former literature teacher is that you get to notice the literary elements found in the Bible. And I'd like to argue today that the first 5 chapters of Mark could be looked at as a literary unit, a cohesive unit. It's all working together. So let's explore that idea. So if we're going to talk literature, first we've got to talk about setting, right? So here we have a nice map showing us the setting, and the story is going to begin in the first 4 chapters across the lake in the town of Capernaum. And then chapter 4 will cross the lake slowly. You guys remember in your literature classes, they drew that nice little diagram of exposition, rising action, climax, and then the denouement. Yeah? You've taken that class? Hopefully? Oh, well, let's say our rising action is the lake crossing. So, in chapter 4, we see as they are attempting to get to the region of the Gerasenes, they run into a furious squall which comes up and threatens to swamp the boat. But the climax is most definitely in chapter 5, when they encounter a legion of demons. And if you know your Roman military terms, then you know that legion means about 6,000 military unit. Whether or not there were actually 6,000 demons in the van, I don't know, but we can understand why he normally was having a bad day. And then across the lake here we have the Gerasenes, which is actually part of a much larger region, the Decapolis. And we'll talk about why that is important in just a moment. But remember this map, because it's going to be important later. So, that setting, if we're in literature, we also talk about character, right? So, who are the characters in this story? I'm not going to put anybody up on the screen that you are expecting, however. So, Mark 4:36 gives a very curious verse about this story. And you've probably read it many times, but you may have passed over this verse. Jesus has spent the day, in chapter 4 we see all of these parables, these commonly themed parables. And at the end of that, he's speaking to this ginormous crowd that has become of such a size that he even had to do his preaching inside of the boat, just so he had room. And after giving those parables, he says, not to just the disciples, but to everybody who was present, let's go over to the other side. So Jesus and the disciples get into a boat, and there were other boats as well. Other boats. Now, when you guys colored this story, when you draw the picture, how many boats are in the picture? I'm thinking maybe just one, right? One boat, maybe Jesus is sitting, maybe he's standing, but there's great big waves, maybe some storms in the clouds overhead. The disciples are all looking very frightened. Maybe Jesus is saying, stop, to calm the storm. But there was just one boat in the picture, right? So who on earth could possibly be in these other boats? Well, to place those people, I think Mark gives us some clues, and we have to retrace our steps. If we go back to chapter 1, Jesus first arrives in Capernaum at verse 21. And he's going to spend the contents of chapter 2, 3, and 4 in Capernaum for the most part, other than his day trips that he makes in the countryside. And when he gets to Capernaum, he's coming with his friends Simon, Andrew, James, and John. So what do you think? At the very least, could we put those 4 guys into the boat with Jesus? Yeah? Give me a nod if you think so. Are we safe with that? Alright, let's put them in the boat. Then, we've got the whole town gathering around where we think maybe Jesus did some of his living, or his residing while he was in Capernaum, at the door of Simon's mother-in-law. A whole crowd gathers there, right from the first chapter, because they're interested in hearing from Jesus. Now, do you think that maybe some of those gatherers could possibly have been in the crowd that day, and possibly have boarded some of the boats? Yeah? Yeah? Oh, not getting a nod from Pastor. Possible? Is it possible? Okay, we won't say it for certain, but possible. So let's put some of that in one of the boats. Then we have Jesus traveling throughout the countryside of Galilee, because that's the reason he's here, right? He tells us that. Do you think it's possible that as he's traveling throughout Galilee, and getting so many people to the point that he cannot even enter the towns because there are so many people physically blocking his way. Wouldn't that be great ministry? You couldn't even get to the place you were going because so many people were coming to hear you. Do you think some of those Galilean country people might have been in Capernaum that day? Could they possibly be in the books? Okay, all right, we'll put that in. Then we've got people hearing that Jesus has come home, right, to Capernaum. So many are gathering that people are no longer able to even access Jesus. It's not just that he can't access them, but now there are so many people that people at the back can't even get to him. And you remember the story, right? The paralytic man, they had to dig a hole through the roof just to be able to access him. Now, I don't know. If I was the paralyzed man who got healed that day, do you think that I would have showed up the day that Jesus is preaching in the boat? Is it possible that he was there? Yeah? How about his 4 friends? Yeah? Okay. Well, we'll give them a list. Then we've got man with evil spirit. We've got Simon's mother-in-law. Remember, she had the fever. She got healed. We've got man with leprosy. We've got man with shriveled hand. I really think Mark would make a good Hollywood script writer. Right? Great character names. Man with shriveled hand. Enters left. Many with diseases and demons. We'll give them their own boat. Jesus is calling Levi and the tax collectors of Capernaum. And he eats with them. Is it possible that they showed up? Maybe. We'll give Levi a place in Jesus' boat. The tax collectors can have their own. And then we've got this nice verse in chapter 3 which says, Judeans are coming from Jerusalem, the south, Idumea, the southeast, across the Jordan, the east, the Tyre and Sidon from the north. I mean, is it any wonder that Jesus needs to be preaching in a boat? He's got even international people who are coming. We'll put them there. And then chapter 3 does tell us that Jesus has called all of the disciples, not just the 4 that came with him. So we can fill the rest of that book. Oh, here's a curious one. Did you expect to see this one? One of the other Gospels reveals an interesting detail about the day of the lakeside parables. That was the day, the very day that Jesus' mother and his brothers come to collect him because they think that he's out of his mind. Now, is it possible that after failing to collect him, they might have stuck around and listened to him along with all the other people? Is it possible they got into the boat? Well, anyway, long story short, we don't know for sure. But at least we have been given some good clues who may or who may not have been there. Either way, Jesus is spending a whole day of teaching inside of a boat with this gigantic crowd in front of him. And did you notice in chapter 4 how all of the parables tie together? There's a common element. The parable about the sower who went out and spread his seeds, remember the word, into the different quadrants and got different results from each. Or the parable of the burning lamb, which ought not to be put under the bushel. Or the parable of the harvesting. Or the parable of the mustard seed, which goes in and comes out and becomes the most giant plant ever. What do all of those parables have to do with each other? They're all kingdom growth themes, right? And so after giving a whole day on that topic, Jesus says, at the end of it all, let's go over to the other side of the lake. Remember, when Jesus was teaching these parables, he had this vista right behind him, right? And do you remember from our setting, when we showed you the map, what was directly behind Jesus? The other side. So, what was on the other side? All right, well, we need some more on the setting. Capernaum. It's on a road called the Way of the Sea, an international highway that connected Asia, Europe, and Africa. So anyone who wanted to travel anywhere by land probably used this road. Is it any accident that Jesus made Capernaum a center place for his teaching? I mean, he literally chose the middle of the entire world at that time. It also was a place of conservative rabbinical study. One of the largest synagogues that has ever been dug up is located there, with an attached school, which is not usual. Happened to have been built by a Gentile, but that's another story. Anybody in the rabbi world who was worth anything probably spent significant time studying at Capernaum, because the rabbis built their teachings on each other. You always, when Jesus shows up and starts teaching on his own authority, that shocks everybody, because that's not the way it's normally done. And so if you're looking for any place in the Jewish world that better represented Jewish pietism, Jewish conservatism, Jewish tradition, you probably found it here in Capernaum. But meanwhile, 180 degrees. On the other side of the lake was the Decapolis. Deca means 10. Apolis means city. Ooh, the 10 cities. Why would they call it the 10 cities? What made it so infamous to get that name? Well, if you wanted to live in the Jewish world, you were kind of expected to behave. But if you were a Gentile, that might be a problem for you. So the Roman government had set up these 10 cities as a place where you could be Gentile. If you wanted to have your drunken revelry, or your debauchery, or your idol worship, or any of those things that Gentiles were notorious for doing, it could happen here. So when the Jews are looking across the lake, what are they thinking? They're thinking, oh man, because the Sadducees were teaching them what? There is no life after death. There is no kingdom of God coming. What you have here, and now this is it. Either we get the blessings of Moses and the law now, or we never get them. And what's stopping us from getting them? Well, you guys, you're the sinners. And what's influencing you to sin? So what was across the lake for them? They were do not even think about them or their ways. They are the pimples that need to be popped, the Las Vegases that need to be shaken in a California earthquake. So when Jesus said, oh, by the way, I apologize if you're from Las Vegas. When Jesus said, let's go over to the other side, how many reasons did they have to say, what? That's a terrible idea. Well, let's try to count. First of all, comfort Jesus. I'm not very comfortable with the idea of going over there. I mean, would you be comfortable going into a brothel or a Buddhist shrine? Or a place filled with smoke and alcohol, or picture. Culture and social battle. Jesus, they don't speak the same language that we do. They don't behave the way that they do. Different things are important to them that are important to us. And, have you noticed for the last few hundred years, we have been struggling with them. They are the enemy and have traditionally always been so. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do this. My grandmother wouldn't do it, and she's the test of common sense, right? What are they going to think about me when I get back? Oh, he's like one of those people. He goes and he hangs with those people. He must be of that crowd. And, you know, I have food to put on the table tonight. I've got animals that need to be taken care of. You know, I spent the day listening to you, Jesus. The lecture is fine, but this is a pretty radical practicum that you're suggesting. And I'm pretty sure there's something in the laws of Moses that says this is a bad idea. Gentiles, we don't even go into their houses. And you're asking us to pay a social call? Thank goodness, though, that we have children of God who do these things, right? Think about the poor Ninevites. God had insisted that Jonah go. Think about Noah's day. Why did Noah not have any children until he was the age of 500? Ever thought about that? He was an anomaly. Right? I mean, we normally miss the fact because we say, well, it was an anomaly for everybody. Look at all those people, they were living hundreds of years. But have you noticed that the youngest recorded father, the oldest recorded father other than Noah was only 165. Noah was an anomaly in his day. Why was that? Well, I have a theory. Would you want to go on a date with someone who the only thoughts of their heart are only evil all of the time? How would that go? Right? Imagine the struggle to even find a wife, to raise a family in a culture like that, and to teach your sons to find wives among a culture like that. Noah did it, and thank goodness, right? Because we're all here today because he did. But not just Jonah. No, how about you? Do any of these things sound familiar to you? You ever cringe at the thought of bringing the word? You know, it's not very polite to draw swords in public these days. Well, thankfully, the Word of God was able to overcome some of these qualms because we know that multiple boats crossed the lake. But no sooner than they encounter the next obstacle. Now a wind is coming up. The clouds are looking dark. Has anybody ever been in a boat when a storm is approaching? Yeah, how did you decide, oh, I'm going to charge straight into it? I think if these boats were being operated by experienced people, they would have said, okay, we have minutes to turn back. This would be a very good idea to turn back and to do so right away. And I don't think Jesus stopped the storm right away either. You know, he did the first puff of wind, he didn't say, stop! Or the first raindrop, stop! You know, it said that a furious wall was allowed to cook up before Jesus stopped anything. We don't know if all of the boats make it across the lake. The text doesn't say. We know at least Jesus' boat does. Whoever decided to stick with him, though, experienced what nobody would have expected could have happened. Suddenly everything calms down all at once. And the only explanation is a miracle. But that serenity doesn't last, right? As they approach the hills, what comes next? The hearing of the five senses that was being stimulated at that moment. There are actually 2,000 pigs up on that street. You're laughing at me. I swear, there are 2,000 pigs. I counted them. I once got a chance to go to an island on Lake Victoria in Uganda, and it was filled with animals. There was nowhere that you could step where you were not stepping in something. The missionaries that had first penetrated this island had set up a clinic as part of their ministry. And no wonder, because everybody was sick all the time. It was the most toxic place I have ever had to be physically present in. And since we were surveying it as a potential ministry site, I prayed, oh God, please, anywhere else, but not this island. Which is convicting because it shows you where my heart was. For the Jew, the pig was the representative of all that was unclean. The tombs that the demon-possessed man came from represented all that was unclean. Leviticus had dug into their souls these concepts. And if that weren't enough, the welcoming committee shows up. Can you imagine the man as he was running to Jesus, crying out at the top of his lungs, chains, bits of blood dripping. The text only tells us that Jesus got out of the boat. We don't know if anybody else did. I mean, would you? Oh, hello. My name is Michael. But Jesus gets out of the boat. And he's not. And then he uses an intense and incredible evangelical technique. So profound, so deeply complex that it would take us hundreds of years studying from the best of the best, the most holy rabbis, the wisest professors, and yet we would still never be able to master this technique. I'm now going to try to demonstrate it for you. Don't blink, don't miss it. I'm sure I won't even come close to how Jesus did it. What is your name? Think about that for a moment. It is actually a rather profound technique. When do you think the last time this man was asked that question? You know, we spend a lot of time today in our culture trying to restrain evil. Just as they did with this man, right? Anyone who met him wanted to tie him up, hold him back. And whether we're talking socially, politically, whatnot, we try to keep evil at bay. But have you ever tried to meet it? To greet it? How would that change the political spectrum? Right? How we did that a little more? How would that change your relationship with your neighbors? We did that a little more. And you notice that the man didn't say Aiden or Billy or Joel or he said, my name is Legion. He offered up Jesus what was inside of him. How would you answer that question if Jesus asked it to you? Would you tell him, oh, my name's Michael? No, he knows that, right? But what is Jesus really looking for? He's looking for what's beneath that name. What darkness would you offer up inside of you? Because why does he want it? Well, why do we confess every Sunday, right? Name it. Bring it up so he can cast it out. This is who I am, now it's not. This is who I am, now it's not. Sunday after Sunday, we do that again and again and again. And then comes an even bigger spectacle, right? The 2,000 pigs storm the banks, and I've not been to the banks on Galilee, but I really hope that they are, like this author imagined them, rather cliff-like, right? Because if they were cliff-like, what's below the cliffs? The boats, right? Hopefully they brought their umbrellas, right? Oh, the demon pigs are raining down around us. Imagine what that must have been like to have 2,000 demon pigs come over into the water. The noise, the chaos, just like was a moment ago with that storm, and then just like a moment ago, all of a sudden, it's done. It's done. Serenity. Silence. The death is below. The life is above. The storm is stilled. The hills cleansed. And the man dressed. That was your day, by the way. Here. I'm looking at the very day that you were baptized. It was the day that your dead pigs were left behind in the water. And I love what comes next. Jesus. How many of you feel bad for the man? He really wants to go with Jesus, but Jesus won't let him. Are you like me? Like, oh, Jesus. He really wants to go with you. Let him go with you. Back to Capernaum. But Jesus knows he doesn't have to bring him back with him to Capernaum, right? Because unlike those people back in the boats, this man is ready. He didn't need the parable of the mustard seed. He is the mustard seed. He's ready to proclaim what has been done for him. And ironically, Jesus doesn't say go and proclaim this in the Decapolis. He says go back to your family. You know, family ministry, if you think about all the mission work that you do over the course of your lifetime, what is more important than what happens within your own family? Because there are lakes of Galilee in your own family, right? Jesus spent 30 of his 33 years at home. And at the end of 30 years, what did he have to show for it? Brothers and a mother who wanted to show up and take charge of him because they thought he was crazy. You will spend more than 30 years in ministry to your family. Noah spent 950, right? But the man doesn't just stop there. Something's been done for him that's changed him so incredibly. He goes throughout the Decapolis. And the next time that Jesus enters into this region is for the feeding of the 4,000. Not the feeding of the 5,000, that was with the more Jewish crowd, but the feeding of the 4,000. What changed in that region from, go away, Jesus, we don't want you here anymore, to let's all show up to hear him while he's teaching out there in the wilderness? I wonder if maybe it was this man. The man with the mustard seed. The story then leaves us with some categories to contemplate. Where do we fall? Are we like those who are among those who did get into the boat, or who turned back? We all have our reasons for not wanting to be evangelists, right? Social boundaries, geographical distances, comfort, common sense. Maybe you are brave enough to get into the boat. And you go back with Jesus to Capernaum. We all need to have time back in Capernaum from time to time, right? That's why we come here every Sunday, to get filled up again, so that we can pour out ourselves for others. But maybe today you identify with the man. Free, ready to go. I'm ready, Jesus. And if you're not, what needs to happen? Well, if you're going to try to do that work, you're going to fail. You can't get yourself to the place where this man was through your own efforts. But how did it work in the story? It was Jesus who did the work, right? Call up the demon, cast it out. Call up the demon, cast it out. Our empowerment in evangelism comes from that. So every day, offer up another demon to God. Because when you understand the depth of your forgiveness and the depth of your identity as a child of God, you can't be moving fast enough. And you certainly don't have to cross an ocean and go to Africa. There are plenty that God gives all of us, calls all of us to speak to Him. I just want to close with a brief anecdote from Uganda. This is the class of Uganda at the Home of Mama Church. She's on the left there. She's our oldest Ambassador Institute graduate. She just started teaching her class, her first class, at 83 years old, I think she was. And I got to witness it. She's nearly blind, but she's one of the most animated storytellers that we have. You're never too old to go to Africa, by the way. Moses went when he was 8. God loves frailness. He loves weakness. And that's how He brings out His glory. At that day at Mwenda, we had a student missing. Her name was Joy, and teacher Sheila, my co-teacher, who's in the picture here with me, said, "Where's Joy?" They said, "Oh, she is taking care of the sick neighbor across the road." So Sheila said, "Oh, well, that's wonderful. When we have finished the lesson, we will go across the road and we will pray for that man." So we thought, oh, that's a wonderful idea. So at the end of class, we all went together as a group. But we couldn't get into the house at first because the people in front of it were saying, no, you cannot enter here. That man does not want your prayer. He is a Muslim. But because they were using the language of Rusoka, I didn't understand this. But teacher Sheila did. She was a fiery evangelist as a teenager. She did street evangelism. We see some of that there in Uganda, where they stand on the street and they cry out the word of God for hours. She said, unless that man is to send out word that he does not want us to enter, we are going to enter this home and pray for him. And that gave us interest. We went into the sitting room. There was no furniture, just a dirt floor and a mattress and a sick man. They asked me to pray for him. I said whatever prayer I was contemplating to say for a sick African villager. I don't remember what the prayer was. I do remember the word Jesus was said again and again in the prayer, which was probably good because I don't know if he spoke English. It might have been the only word he understood. But at the end of the prayer, he sat up and he said, "Thank you for not passing me by." We promised we'd come and pray for him again at our next class, the next Saturday. But we never saw him again. His family had moved him into one exposed to us. But I can't help but wonder if maybe a mustard seed was planted. I confess to you, I would not have entered that house if I had known he was a Muslim. You know, God had tricked me to make that all happen the way that it did. And so I just want to invite you. The spot in the boat is open for you. And it is a privilege to have that spot. And to have it as many years as you have it in front of you. To sit next to the man with the shriveled hand. Wave at him. He really wants to wave back. And we all have our shriveled hands, right? Because the good news, brothers and sisters, is that there was a day that Jesus came across the lake for you.